Dear participants, welcome to Ukraine British Learners Network Academy. And today we'll talk about very interesting and very sensitive, in my opinion, topic. It's going to be about diversity and inclusion and how this helps us in our personal development. Today we have star speakers. I'm very glad to welcome today Frank-Adrien Papon, who's Counsel for EMEA region at BlackLine, and Aleisha Associate Director at Robert Walters.
Hi.
So we have a discussion today, and I urge everyone to join the discussion and raise your questions, even if they're offline. Frank-Adrien, Aleisha, so my first question to you will be the following. In the UK, everyone is talking about diversity and inclusion. This conversation and these two words you can hear at all stages of your employment process, starting from your interview, then when you're signing employment contract, then when you're making your first steps in the company, and you see the walls in some posters, you see booklets with information about diversity and inclusion. Can you please explain us what these two words mean and what is the difference between them? Because in my understanding, they are the same, but not the same.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Frank, do you want to take this one or?
Sure. I mean, I want to hear your opinion, Aisha, as well. So do you want to go? I mean, I'm happy to go first. Up to you.
Yeah, I'll jump straight in. So Iryna, you're exactly right. I mean, they are the same, but one essentially facilitates the other, in my opinion. So diversity is just sort of demonstrating the variety of characteristics that employees can have. So that's diversity in the workplace. Inclusion in the workplace is facilitating that diversity. So ensuring that all employees can feel psychologically safe, feel accepted, and going about that with more formalized, efforts. So that's really what is understood, very generally speaking, as diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Yeah, I have the same comment to make. Yeah, I mean, diversity is essentially the goal, right? It's what everybody is aspiring to and reaching. It's, nobody really has reached that goal, and it probably will never be reached really fully, but that's the goal. It's you want a diversity of backgrounds and lived experience, around you in your life and in your work, and also it's a belief that diversity is something good, that not just from a moral standpoint, but also because it's good for business. It helps people be more creative, bring in more experiences and angles and perspectives. So if you are in a business where creativity is important, where you want people to really, be at their most creative, it is essential. And inclusion is the hard work. It's the legs. It's what you need to do and to implement and to put in place to reach that goal. Because it's hard work, and everybody is approaching it from different angles, with different history and starting position. But the great thing is that now the practice is really becoming more standardized. There are diversity and inclusion professionals all around us. And it's that's the great news. And now we have tools to, at least walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
So I like how you described diversity and inclusion. So diversity is the goal and inclusion is the legs. So can you please tell me how this goal and legs, they are formatted? Because obviously someone has to see this goal, and this goal comes out of something. Is it like social problem that rises, or this is companies' need. How to determine these goals?
Yeah, I quite like to liken it as training to run a marathon. It's quite similar in my opinion. So no one wakes up and is not a runner and then the next day runs their target time for a marathon. It takes understanding where you are currently. So that's a business looking at their employees, understanding what it is that they're lacking, whether it be certain policies in relation to maybe their recruitment process. And that's obviously the lens that I look at it from because of my experience in assisting clients with recruitment. So they use data to understand where it is that that's their starting point. And frankly, there is no one answer to your question, Iryna, because some clients have been very, very proactive with diversity and inclusion policies, ED&I in general, for many, many years. And some are at the very start of their journey or have been over the last couple of years. So it's a very individualized approach, but it's using data, starting at their very, very beginning point and undertaking that training or undertaking that that improvement to constantly be striving towards their goal. And as Frank perfectly put, unfortunately, no client of mine is at their goal. No client is achieving their goal yet, but it's undertaking, best practices to ensure that they're working very actively towards it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, Frank.
Sorry, Iryna, I dropped for a minute, so I had to reconnect. Is your question number 2? Why is diversity important?
No. My question is something between.
So can you repeat the question because I didn't hear it?
I said that how to determine the diversity and not to determine, but you said about the diversity is the goal and inclusion is the legs. So how to determine for the company what goals and what legs they need to have. So how to understand what they need.
Yeah, actually, there are easy signs to pick up, right? I mean, the first thing I look at, to be honest with you, if I want to figure out if I'm talking to a business that's inclusive and that has done its homework, is I look at the board. I look at the board of directors. Yeah, if you see a series of old white men, or a frat party, that tells you something. And then you look at the executive committee, right? Who's at the top? Who are the 5, 10, 15 people at the top of the organization that are calling the shots? Yeah. And again, if it's all old, white, Cambridge educated, same old usual suspects, that tells you something. And then, when you meet them, when you go to their offices and you don't see any Black people, you don't see any women, you don't see, any openly gay person, or you don't see an employee resource group. There are many, many telltale signs that tell you that a business is more focused, on being a fraternity than being an actually inclusive business. Does that make sense?
Totally. But with regard to this, I have another question. So I got the situation in my life, and for example, the company had more women in the company rather than men. So, and the goal was to hire more men. And then there was the station. And I think that it can be like, vice versa, where more men and less women. So, and the station is, should the company hire the employees only because they have they are women or they are men, or they have another sexual or orientation, or maybe, I don't know, color of the skin. So, but how to find for the company this, golden line, whom they should hire, and how they have to hire in terms of keeping the business right, and being in line with the diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, this question, to sort of phrase it slightly differently, it's where have employers not been inclusive in the past, and how can they rectify that? And I think that's more the lens at which I look at this through. So how can they be as inclusive as possible to ensure that they're attracting all candidates? So again, it will be a very individualized approach as to what each company, or in my case client, identifies as their starting point and equally identifies as their end goal. But most clients, when they're looking through and really undertaking a diversity audit, what they identify is that actually there are significant biases under which and through which they have undertaken their recruitment. Certainly, very rarely are they conscious biases, but they exist. And so that's what has been, I guess it's overcoming that. So whatever that bias sort of approach was at one point, potentially, it's overcoming that to ensure that, again, the wider public, the general population, for whatever that specialism may look like, if you are recruiting a specialism. So for example, in my case, I recruit lawyers. You naturally have to be a qualified lawyer for you to practice in this case. And so it's having a look at that pool and being able to attract as many people in that pool as possible. That is what inclusion is. It isn't trying to obtain necessarily 50-50. It's ensuring that you're not turning candidates away or turning employees away, or simply making it not a safe, secure, accepted environment for them to succeed in, versus necessarily sort of hitting targets or certain figures. Now that's my approach. That might be slightly different if a particular client or company, with as Frank identified earlier, if you are an all-male board, maybe the approach for the next hire or whatever it might be very targeted in terms of a more sort of positive diversity hire. I'm not too sure. These things are very specific when it comes to what each company is looking to do. But yeah, I think inclusivity and the inclusion process is very much to try to attract as many candidates as possible, or not discount as many candidates as possible to a particular role.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, except I would just add maybe, from just a management perspective, having a business that really reaches its full potential and runs on all pistons. I would say that, and it is a very political question, and the question is, do you affirmatively, work at hiring people who will correct the imbalances and the conscious or unconscious biases of your organization. And, some companies have a very clear stand on that, and some companies have a, more of a political problem with affirmative action. Let's just put it that way. I personally think that, affirmative action is actually needed in companies that, for example, have no women on their board or in their management. That would be, a priority for that business to hire women. So I guess the first step, as Aleisha mentioned, is you need to understand, how not diverse your business is, if that's the situation that you're in. So, are you still in the Middle Ages on diversity? And for that, it's important to do the math. If it's a huge organization, I mean, it's very rare that a huge organization would not be diverse, but there are still some. And you can also be a law firm that has no diversity, or just token diversity, but actually the numbers show that there's only 18% of equity partners that are female, for example, and that across the board all the minority partners or associates make about 25% less than the highly paid. There are ways to, if you're in good faith trying as a law firm, I'll just take a law firm as an example because they're pretty, bad actors, even though they try and do the right thing and they understand the problem. So, but the reality is still that most law firms are challenged on that. And this is something that, a group like the diversity law firm here in London does very well. They send, huge questionnaires to law firms who are sometimes reluctant to answer them because they're afraid. But that's also something that, the forum does very well because they say, don't be afraid to uncover unpleasant numbers. Everybody has unpleasant numbers, just like everybody has unconscious bias. There's nobody out there that doesn't have bias. So, if you want to start addressing the problem, you need to have the humility to understand that you may have a problem. And then there are people who can help you, benchmark you against your competitors, against other people. Because if you want to attract the best talent today, especially young talent, you will be evaluated on that. Young kids today do not want to work in the law firm that I knew when I was their age. That's gone. That's yesterday. And so if you want to attract those really super bright kids who have overcome challenges of being in a minority, who are, the first kids that ever been, to college or to law school. If you want to attract this kind of resilient, go-getter, you cannot have a law firm of yesterday. So that's what I would say. And it's the same thing for businesses. Although most major, large businesses today have a diversity challenge, but it's not as bad as most law firms.
Perhaps. So why diversity and inclusion important at the workplace? You said, Frank, you said at the beginning about some developments, improvement of work. So why it's happening? Because of diversity.
So it's important because you want the best people to work for you. That's really the simple answer. And the best people, talent is everywhere. I know that can be a controversial, opinion, but I really believe that. And if you work for the most creative companies in the world, okay, I've worked for a couple, you see that they hire for diversity of experience. They hire because they hire for potential. They don't hire for skills. I mean, I worked for one of those creative companies, which is perhaps the most creative one in the world. And I wasn't hired on my legal skills, even though I was doing legal work. I asked them, I said, why did you hire me? And they said, well, because, there's a line at the bottom of your resume that we thought was interesting. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like I travel, I like to read. I said, no, you work for a film company. And that's what we interviewed on, and then I got the job, I went there, and I was surrounded by lawyers who were all, freaks. They all had worked for creative companies in the arts, in the music industry, in the film industry, and it was very relevant to the work we were going to do. So, I always take that as an example. You want to hire the people who are the most creative. It is essential. If you are going to innovate, if you're in a business that, just pumps oil, but even that, you still need to innovate. But I mean, if you want to be in a tech company or a creative industry where innovation is absolutely paramount, then you need the best people out there, and they are everywhere. So they're hard to look at sometimes if you don't have the proper glasses. But if you are equipped to proactively, be a diverse and an inclusive environment, then you will attract the best.
Yeah, I
Aleisha,
completely
what's
agree.
your approach as a recruiter?
My approach, as in terms of advising clients, or my approach to recruit for my own team?
Why diversity and inclusion is important at workplace?
I completely agree with Frank. I mean, you want to get the best for your team. Everyone does, whatever that best looks like for you. And as Frank perfectly puts, talent's everywhere. I think there's no better time to start than now if you haven't taken a look at this data, and I think a lot of people can be fairly well, can sort of have their head in the sand a bit when it comes to how important it is for juniors who are joining the organization. There is so much competition now between you and your direct however many competitors in terms of hiring top talent. And I have had it personally. I've had it in a number of instances with candidates I've worked with that they've attended interviews and haven't seen anyone that looks, sounds, acts, is like them in their interview process, and they might have had 4 stages of interviews, and they know that they're not going to potentially fit in, which is really important, particularly for juniors or if they're starting out in a new role or their first role. But frankly, they understand, again, as Frank put, they understand the importance of it. No longer is this a hidden concept, a quiet concept, and they want to work for the innovators, and frankly, it's the innovators that are doing good things when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So yeah, really should have started many years ago, but if you haven't, start today, because it's really important for all future hiring, without a doubt.
So back to what Frank said about that your inner side, your creativity prevails over hard skills. I think it's a very strong message to Ukrainian lawyers who have relocated to the UK. So obviously they don't have that strong hard skills in English law, right? They are very good in Ukrainian law though. Any recommendations from you with regard to that, how Ukrainian lawyers should behave in order to show that they are the assets for the future employer during their interviewing process or during their first steps at work, because there is a probation period as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Aisha, you want to go?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I'll certainly kick things off. Number one, and I think at the heart of the diversity and inclusion discussion, everyone really does need to be themselves as much as they can. In terms of behaviors in an interview process, simply put, the role won't be right for you if you need to pretend to be someone that you're not. I mean, that's fundamentally at the heart of diversity and inclusion, and why these policies are so important. You know, this is something that is the case across any role that I have recruited for. Team fit, team culture, these things are often mentioned by hiring managers, and they want to ensure that someone, you know, all clients I've worked with have they're striving for the right things. Some of them are certainly not achieving them just yet, but they're certainly, you know, they're hoping to achieve the right things. They want people to be safe and secure in their workplace and their environment. You have to be yourself, and that's really the only advice that I can give. In terms of interviewing well, putting your best foot forward, that's simply another discussion. You know, there's obviously a lot that would go into the preparation stages of undertaking a first, second, third stage interview, but you must be yourself. That's absolutely the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree with Aisha. I think it's really important to bring your authentic self, as people say now. And this is why it's important to create what we call a safe environment for you to be your true self. For example, me as a gay man, you know, the leader of our ERG group of LGBTQI plus people, you know, I am welcome here. I'm celebrated during Pride. You know, I feel that I belong, and it's a huge, and I know that I'm not alone in that, and it's a huge asset for all of us, because, you know, we don't have to pretend, as Aisha said, we don't have to pretend to be somebody that we're not. And it's true of all the members of all our employee resource groups: women, people of color, veterans, people who are neurodiverse. You know, find your tribe, and, you know, and connect with your tribe for the support, for the encouragement, and also go and meet other tribes, you know, to learn. I mean, I'm also a member, mostly a listening member of our women's group. You know, my company is founded by women, it's run by women, it has amazing, you know, top management that are all mostly women. And so it changes everything. And I, as a gay man, have a lot to learn about the challenges, the resilience, the things that these women have faced and overcome. Because, ultimately, people who are in a minority or who need to be in an ERG are people who have overcome adversity, prejudice, horrible racism, homophobia, sexism, you name it. And so I would add another thing about, for Ukrainian lawyers, I was foreign trained, as I was French, but I trained in New York, and I'm foreign qualified. I'm admitted in New York and in Paris. I've been practicing in Switzerland, in Ireland, in the UK. The wonderful thing about the UK is that it's the only place where it's never been a problem that I wasn't a solicitor. Okay. And that tells you a lot about London and how open it is. This is not the case of a place like, Paris, Frankfurt, or Zurich, where, they will, in an ad, for a job, they will say, we want you to be qualified in Zurich. And I'm like, okay, well, that tells you something about their openness, right? Because frankly, if you're an amazing New York or French or British lawyer, whatever, there's no reason why you wouldn't be an amazing lawyer in Zurich. Okay, so I'm telling my Ukrainian friends and the mentors the mentees that I have, if you're an amazing lawyer in Ukraine, I want you in my team, especially because, we're going to have to reconstruct Ukraine for the next 10, 15, 20 years, right? And they're all going to be, and Ukraine's going to be reconstructed with the money flowing from the European Union, but it's still going to be channeled by London, which is still in Europe, the largest, financial center. So if you're Ukrainian, you're going to be rebuilding Ukraine for the next 10, 5, 15 years. And the smart law firms, they know that, or they should know that. So, stick with what makes you special. As a refugee, you've overcome huge obstacles. You have resilience. You have to open up. You have to learn new laws fast and quickly. So you're a huge asset. So own your difference. Understand that it's not for everybody, but if you find the person who actually needs that talent, the potential is enormous. That's what I would add.
Yeah, and just further to that, just lastly, to assist with that as well, something I should mention is make sure that you identify any needs that you have throughout an interview process so that you can be your authentic self. So, for example, if you do need assistance with, certain aspects of, maybe a drafting exercise, if there is a language barrier, if you are a neurodiverse Ukrainian candidate, make sure that you're identifying what parameters and what policies you need to, really be put in place to ensure that you can perform as best you can. This is something that we have seen a vast array of reasonable adjustments in the UK, and this is what I call a hot topic, but not a moment too soon. This is something that is really important for every interviewing candidate, and something that is very understood, accepted, and proactively questioned of most candidates in most processes. But sometimes I think, and I'm certainly guilty of this, I will think of a Ukrainian candidate and think, oh, maybe it would be a language barrier is the only barrier to whatever they needed to undertake in this interview process. That could be a drop in the ocean if they are neurodivergent and they're not able to undertake maybe a written exercise in person. These are things that really need to be understood ahead of, putting yourself through a 2, 3, 4 stage interview process. So whether you're partnering with a recruiter, whether you're going through a direct process, just make sure that you're very open to accepting help.
We were talking about diversity inclusion and how the companies struggle to keep these rules, how they draft the procedures, how they impose these procedures. So, but if you feel that this diversity and inclusion are only on the paper, so how should you act in this case?
Aisha, you want to go?
Sure. So do you mean when it comes to interviewing at an employer, a potential employer, or somewhere that you are currently working?
Well, I think that's both cases, but I think that's more if you work already at the company, then obviously there is compliance officer or any ethics manager to whom you can with whom you can communicate about this. But for example, if there is a recruiting process and during the interview you feel that the company says that they're the most ethical company, that they have strong diversity and inclusion and equality policies, but in fact it appears that you feel this, that it goes wrong. How should you act? You have to submit a claim somewhere, or maybe you have to have an open conversation with the recruiter, or what steps have to be made?
Yeah, and this goes back to, I guess, where companies are along their journey of diversity and inclusion. As Frank and I have already said, many are not nearly where they need to be. It will depend on the circumstance, and I hate answering questions like that. But frankly, some people still do need to be trailblazers within their organizations, and that's as frank and honest as I can be. And we've seen that across a number of clients where unfortunately you need to be starting or continuing a lot of these conversations to ensure that changes are being made, and that's how change started in the first place. Organizing, establishing groups, ensuring that more visibility is brought to whether it be underrepresented groups or particular issues or problems, or, as Frank said, celebrations, whatever it is that you've identified as lacking in your workplace. If you otherwise feel as though you are psychologically safe and secure and accepted, but perhaps what is on paper isn't reflected in senior management, I mean, I would be bringing that up. I would be making noise about it, and I would be ensuring that change was being made. If it's something that is much more toxic, say for example you are experiencing harm, that's a very, very different story, and something to be advised on by HR, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I would say is that you need to distinguish, organizations that are genuinely committed, who have the belief, but simply, don't know where to start, or, don't really have ERGs yet, but they have the intention. So they have good intentions, but they have, as I said, as Aisha and I said, it's a journey, and not everybody gets it, and people are sometimes very far in the journey, or they're just starting the journey. So if there is good intentions but just bad implementation, I would say, then I would see that as an opportunity, because just take it upon yourself, just roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty and start a group, and talk around, say, hey, I need a neurodiverse, I'm neurodiverse, I'm gay, I'm a woman, I'm Black, and there are not many of us. So start a group. You'll see people will reach out, they will come out wherever you are. And, you'll get that support. And it's an amazing opportunity to connect with people and frankly, to learn leadership skills for your company. And then, the company will hopefully recognize that and promote that and support you. And that's a wonderful experience. Conversely, if you're in a company that, talks the talks but does not walk the walk, so they are just greenwashing or pinkwashing or whatnot, and yeah, it's everywhere on the walls, and the policies were cool, but really the numbers and the picture doesn't reflect that, then as Aisha said, you can fight, you can try and bring an HR claim if you're the victim of racism. For example, one of my mentee was in a very large company. She's Black and an immigrant, and she just was confronted with outright racism, and she was considering whether she should bring that up and fight the fight, which I thought was very brave. I actually advised her not to do that. I said, you know what, you're young, the future is ahead of you, you don't want to waste the energy, they don't deserve you, move on. Yeah. And so, but that's my personal view. Of course, she may have to take it a different way. And also, I was the victim of homophobia when I was younger, and actually I wasn't really aware of it. My close friends came to me and said, what people are saying either behind your back or even to you is actually homophobic. But I was so, upbeat and young, and also coming from New York, I couldn't even believe that was happening. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that if you see, if you are in an organization, or if you're interviewing and you feel that, there is no openness, then, like Maya Angelou says, if people show you who they are, you need to believe them the first time. Okay? That's who they are. They're not going to change. Yeah. So don't believe them, and then walk. Don't waste your time with people who don't deserve you. That's my advice. And if you have been the victim of egregious, discrimination, yeah, bring it up if you have the resources, the energy, and the support. But also, life is too short, and there are lots of employers out there who will celebrate you and welcome you. So just leave them in the dust and move on. That's also my advice, but it's not for everybody, obviously.
Yeah, there are many stations, especially with Ukrainian lawyers who struggle to find job because of different matters. So finally, how diversity and inclusion can help in personal and professional growth and success?
Hugely, in every way. I mean, is this from an employee perspective when it comes to their own sort of development?
Yes.
And sorry, answering it from the perspective that they are in an inclusive environment in their workplace, do you mean?
Well, you can't foresee any place, you just came to work and you work here. So, but again, how interpretation and how acceptance, understanding of inclusion, diversity can help in my personal growth, in my personal development. Why should I follow it except of my, personal feelings towards this?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, look, I mean, it's something that I think proof is in the pudding, right? It's something that, as a manager myself, being able to grow into a role that involves management. So again, speaking from more of a personal perspective, understanding the importance of diversity is essential. And again, that's both in terms of my own acceptance within an organization, but also who it is that I'm mentoring and developing up, myself, and naturally that allows me to progress as well. I mean, accepting that Edie and I, is a good thing, is pretty straightforward, because as we spoke about at the outset, it helps to problem solve, it establishes more creative environments, it brings about, very new and refreshing ideas, it ensures that we're remaining accountable to each other for training, learning, understanding, and acceptance. It's a reflection of your day-to-day life, frankly, and certainly unless you keeping only to yourself in your everyday life, it ensures that you're an empathetic member of society as well. So I mean, it's so much a part of who we are, and it's all around us. And I think the world can do with more of it in general, I think. I'm not sure if that's been particularly useful with answering that question. Do you have a more sort of specific question that maybe
No,
segues on? Or?
To understand more about diversity and about inclusion, and why everyone because again, diversity and inclusion, it's about personal feelings and about personal attitude, whether you accept it or you don't accept it. If you don't accept something, I'm sorry, like color of the skin or religion, or sexual orientation, if you personally can't accept some differences in societies. So in my understanding, even though you can read billion of literature on this, you can go on numerous lectures on this. So most likely you won't have this inner feelings, because it's going to be in your brain, but not in your heart. So that's why I think it's important to understand how this feeling of importance of diversity and inclusion, how this can help in your personal development. why a person should follow it in order to reach something, or in order to change something in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this to sound like it's a career, enhancement, or a gadget to put on your LinkedIn thing. It's not that, and or if that's how you see it, it's not really going to be successful, because at the end of the day, it's about opening up your mind, about understanding, having, as Aisha said, empathy, curiosity, understanding what people's struggles are that you may not be aware of, right? I mean, a single mother of twins, right? She can't have meetings at some times in the afternoon, and if you don't understand why, or you don't, and you keep putting your meetings there, she's gonna gradually walk out, and you're gonna lose a huge advantage of having a mother of two baby twins. Trust me, this is a very useful life skill, to have to care about two twins at a young age. So do you know what I mean? Like it, and also you have to be curious about what we call intersectionality. So you have to step out of, like, I'm in a great group, but you have to step out of your comfort zone. You have to go and reach out to Black people, women, and learn what are their challenges, what is their lived experience that you don't experience yourself. I'm a white guy. I don't experience racism the same way as my Black friends. So you just, it's just a better self-awareness, better understanding of your team and of the world. I mean, it's all positive to me, and it's not for everybody. Not everybody likes to be challenged or confronted with things that they are not aware of, or that they may feel uncomfortable with. But it's definitely something that I would highly recommend. It's a win-win proposition, but you have to do it with your heart, and you have to do it with humility and curiosity, because as the fact of the matter, and this is the beginning of every DEI journey, is you have to look yourself in the mirror and accept that however sophisticated or experienced in DEI you are, or yourself, the victim of discrimination, everybody carries unconscious bias. And until and unless you acknowledge that, you can't progress, you can't learn, you can't open up. And it's only when you confront yourself to other people's challenges that you sometimes discover your own. And that's a wonderful, feeling of self-awareness. It's something that, frankly, it's going to help you be a leader. It's going to help you, be more creative. And again, it comes back to the same thing. It's going to help you attract the best.
Yeah, I'll also want to add from my part is that as a refugee, or as a person who starts living in another country, it's important, if you want to be a part of the society, if you want to be a part of the team at work, it's very important to know cultural dimensions. It's very important to know cultural characteristics. It's very important to understand with what the society lives. So when you start understanding that, you become a part of the society. If you do not understand that, it prevents in your communication with other people. It prevents of being a part of the team. It prevents in being the part of, again, environment. And it makes you in some way a toxic person for that environment. So that environment will always say no to you. So that's why also for people who start living in other countries, it's important to understand and accept this diversity, inclusion, and equity. Can you please give some recommendations how to improve diversity and inclusion in personal development?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, just ensuring that you are upfront with your needs, that you can demonstrate what it is that is going to allow you to achieve what you want to achieve. we have a corporate culture in London now, and I say now because it's developed and improved in the 5 years that I've been in the London environment market, that it's no longer taboo to ask questions around maternity leave cover or paternity leave cover. Again, reasonable adjustments for, interview processes, reasonable adjustments to start working. Ensure that you are and as open and honest as you can be. And the best advice that I can ever give candidates is, if you are yourself and that company doesn't want you, it's a good thing, because it will not be the right fit for you, and you will constantly be trying to fit yourself into an environment that you will not thrive in. It's absolute, and I know sometimes it's challenging because, frankly, salary is a salary and you want to make sure that you're earning money, but it's really important that you are putting as much of yourself into a process and as much transparency as you can to ensure that you're receiving that from your employer, from your team, from the environment, to succeed and to thrive. And you absolutely won't be able to thrive and achieve what you want to, with still having blinders on, with not being your, as Frank put, your authentic self. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, I mean, I would second that, and maybe add that, again, join your ERG groups, join a refugee group, help each other out. You have similar challenges, and own your difference. Don't go and work for people who don't appreciate your talent. I've been an immigrant most of my adult life, and I've had to fit in, and it wasn't always easy, especially with law firms. But I found that the places where I grew and learned the fastest were the ones where I didn't really have to fit in, right? They were actually seeking people like me who were a little different, who spoke different languages. A lot of people, for example, think of neurodiverse people as people who have a handicap, right? They forget that neurodiverse people have amazing qualities, to focus, to be driven and have attention to detail. It's also it's a huge asset. Even ADD is a huge asset if you want to have the picture, focus rather than the weeds. It can be, of course, a liability. I don't want to minimize that, but just own your difference. And as Aisha says, it's not worth it to hide who you are, to try and absolutely have to fit the mold. And in our profession, we have to be honest with ourselves. A lot of people want to be lawyers because they want money and challenging, what they think is going to be challenging intellectual work. And then they go to big law firms and they realize that they're surrounded by pathological people and the work is not that great and the money is frankly not worth it. And so they reconsider. And a lot of kids today, and I'm glad to see around me, can see that through. And so it's a challenge for law firms. Law firms have changed dramatically. I think Aisha will agree. I mean, the law firms of even 5 years ago are completely different. The way they look at social mobility, at diversity in their recruitment, suddenly they're seeing talent everywhere. And that's because they put the right glasses on and they've been helped by professionals and they understand that they have a challenge that they need to address. So, the arc of progress is long, but it bends towards equality. And that's true for all diverse people, especially, I mean, if you're a refugee, right? And if you had to, you had to leave everything behind and you've experienced war, I mean, it just teaches you so many, language skills, adaptation, resilience. I mean, who wouldn't want to hire a refugee? Come on. It's a no-brainer.
Well, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I have the last question to you. And can you please give a short answer on this, just a few words? What does the expression "everyone matters" mean personally for you?
Aisha, you want to go?
Sure. I mean, it's sort of a bit of a culmination of what we've already discussed, but to me, it's being safe in your skin, people really respecting your difference, and as a manager, again, respecting other differences. That's, yeah.
Yeah, same thing. You know, personally, as a gay man, 25 years ago when I started my career, I was in a relatively toxic environment, and I did experience homophobia, even though either consciously or unconsciously I didn't want to see it. But now it's pretty clear to me that, you know, and if you experience prejudice as a woman, as a Black person, as an immigrant, as somebody who doesn't, you know, speak perfect English, but speaks perfect Ukrainian or French or German, you know, and if you experience that, it can be incredibly limiting, and you know, it will attack your self-esteem. So this is why it's really important that you don't experience that early in your career, because let me tell you, there's nothing that a lawyer loves to do than to, you know, beat down another lawyer. And, you know, we are a very competitive bunch. So as a young lawyer, I always tell my mentees, just, you know, you have to be Teflon about criticism. You have to take it and change, you know, but progressively, but just be prepared to just be facing immense criticism. We are a profession of you know, insecure perfectionists, and you have to be aware of that. So 25 years ago, again, I really couldn't have reached my potential, and 25 years later, I am in an environment that celebrates all its diversity, and where I'm flourishing and happier, and I keep learning all the time. So that's what, you know, uh, it means to me, welcoming everybody. It has a very personal meaning.
Aleisha, Frank-Adrien, thank you so much for this conversation. Frankly, I can keep talking about this for hours, but unfortunately, we're really limited in time. But today webinar, I would like to finish with one phrase that was a long time ago said by Mahatma Gandhi. Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our society. Again, thank you so much for being a part of UBLN Academy. Thank you so much for bringing your thoughts and your ideas and recommendations to us. It was extremely useful. Hope to see you at our next webinar sessions. Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and
Thank you so
congratulations.
much. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.